intersection of making art and making money. Should you take criticism and use it to improve your business and get better? Or should you ignore critics and focus on the people who your work is for, your great people? Hello and welcome to episode 116 of Explore Your Enthusiasm. I am Tara Swiger and I help makers and artists feel awesome about their business and build businesses they'll love. And today's episode is inspired by a specific tweet conversation I had, on Twitter. But I also get asked this question every time I teach about marketing and focusing on your right people. So I wanted to dive into it with you today because you might be wondering about the same thing, about how to deal with critics and criticism. So I'm going to lay out what the Twitter conversation was. It might help give it for you to understand where it was coming from, and also that I've been thinking about this ever since. So I think this is something that we should talk about. You might have the same questions. So we're going to, I'm going to tell you the story, and then we're going to discuss the criticism and whether you should listen to it, and when you should listen to critics and when you should ignore them. So here's what happened. And we're going to go way back so you're going to understand all of it. So a couple months ago, when Instagram changed the way that its feed worked, I shared a picture that showed people how to turn on their notifications of when I posted a new post. So you can look at the people you're following and actually turn on to be notified when they post a new photo. So I was about to launch a daily challenge. Instagram was changing its feed, so I didn't want people to miss my daily challenge posts, and I knew that a lot of them weren't familiar with the changes and had no idea you could turn on notifications. I actually wasn't until I had read up on it. So I knew that a big percentage of my people were going to be interested in this information and aren't going to understand the change or even know that that was a thing you could do. And I knew this because A, I didn't know about the notifications, and B, I have my mom. My mom loves people on Instagram, wants to know when they're going to post photos, wants to make sure she sees everything she wants to see, and she had no idea about these changes. Also, I have a local friend who had actually had notifications turned on of her favorite Instagrammers, and she would be super happy about it. Keep in mind, this is not at all what I would do in my own business or my own Instagram feed. I have all notifications turned off. I have it turned off for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even email. Nothing tells me when I have a new message, a new reply, or a new like. The only notifications I get are from Asana, which is my project management tool I use with my team, and only then I get notified when they're asking me a question. That's it. Otherwise, I have time set aside to answer customer service questions, to chat with people on Instagram, to look at my replies in all of the places and reply to them. So a message about how to get notified about someone else's posts are not going to be from me. So this photo that I posted on Instagram that said, this is how you turn on notifications if you want to hear when I have a new photo, posting on Instagram, that wasn't the kind of thing I would need, but I knew that a big percentage of my people were going to be interested in it. So after I posted that image, I then saw on Twitter a bunch of people who were saying, who were complaining about those kind of images, who were sick of seeing them because they followed a bunch of people who had all shared it. Now, they weren't talking about my images, but they were talking about images like it. They were saying, in effect, don't tell me to turn on notifications to follow you. I don't like notifications. And I get that because I don't either. I just told you I have all mine turned off. But to be honest, for a couple minutes, I got worried. I started to feel really weird and kind of icky. Like maybe I shouldn't have posted this message. Maybe I annoyed my people. Maybe my people secretly hated me as much as these people hated the notifications. So I started to worry that I was annoying people. But then I started thinking about this like over the course of an afternoon. And what struck me is that the people on Twitter who were complaining about these messages, they were reacting to the kind of message that wasn't for them. They didn't like messages that weren't meant for them. The messages were meant for, the here's how you turn on your notifications, were meant for people who A, like to turn on notifications, and B, didn't know how to. So they needed help when doing it. So I see messages all the time from people that I follow and love that aren't actually meant for me. They're telling me how to do something I already know how to do. They're telling me to do something I'm not interested in doing. So why not just ignore those messages? So I got on Periscope the next day, or a couple days from that, and that's what I said. I thought that this is something as content creators, as the maker of messages, we worry about a lot. We see that so-and-so says that they don't like tweets that promote your business. They see that they don't like seeing people linking to their Etsy shop on Instagram. They see that people complain about the kind of thing they're doing and they take it hard. So I was getting on Periscope, and my little mini lesson on Periscope was, first of all, as a content reader, every message isn't for you. If I share instructions that tell you how to do something that you already know how to do, obviously that instructional message wasn't for you. So don't get offended or say she shouldn't do that. Just ignore it. As a reader of the internet, it's your responsibility to pay attention to and follow the kind of people who are providing you with information you want, and to not follow the kind of people who aren't. So, and if someone shares messages that are mostly not useful or interesting or apply to you, then unfollow them. Unfollow them. That will make your internet life so much easier. As a reader, as a consumer of internet information, choose who you want to follow and who you don't. That's a reaction that makes sense. Complaining that people are sharing messages you don't care about doesn't make a lot of sense because you're choosing to interact with them. So it doesn't make sense for you to say they shouldn't post that. It makes more sense for you to not follow them. So that's what I said on Periscope. I said on Periscope, if you don't like my messages and you don't like the content that I'm sharing, just stop following me. Just stop watching. We'd both be happier if you go than if you criticize what I share and then I feel bad about it, and maybe I pay too much attention to the people who my stuff isn't actually for. I need to pay attention to the people who my stuff is for. So as content creators, we need to keep this in mind all the time. So my Periscope is kind of from two perspectives. The first perspective as a reader, to stop following people who aren't useful to you. And then as a content creator, remember that your readers have the option to follow you or not follow you. You're not forcing them to do anything. It's up to the reader or the follower to stop paying attention. It's up to them to decide if it's right for them or not, and you to focus all of your time and energy on creating the stuff that your people, your buyers, are going to care about and want and need. So you help people figure out if they should be following you or not by focusing your attention on the people who are buyers. So I've worked with a lot of people who have built big audiences of people who weren't actually their right buyers. They were people who either wanted their free content, they were other crafters who wanted like tutorial content, and if the people sold a finished good, that wasn't their right buyers. So how do you get the right followers? By focusing on the people who are right for the product that you sell. As a product maker, I mean, this is different if you're a blogger who's selling advertising spots or you're some other kind of business, but as a product maker, in order to get a following full of people who will actually buy your product, share content that is for them, not for some other group of people. Right? So some of our messages are for a specific section of our people. Some of our messages aren't for the people who are our peers or for the people we follow online. The buyer of your painting or your purses or your designs is not a person, usually 90% of the time, is not a person who has another online business and is really online savvy. It's for a buyer of purses and paintings and knitwear designs, often who don't have the same kind of internet savvy and aren't being bombarded by notifications all the time. So, as a content creator, when you hear people saying, I'm so sick of this, you have to keep in mind that they're not the people you're talking to. They're not your right people, at least for this message, and ignore them and keep doing what you're doing for your people and your buyers. Now, that's what I said that day, and I totally stand by that. All of that is true, and I want you to absorb that. As a reader, you choose who to let into your internet life. As a creator, keep in mind that your readers have that same responsibility, and you will help the best buyers and the best lovers of your work find you and know to follow you by creating content specifically for them. Even if it's not trendy, even if it isn't for all of your peers, even if it isn't for the people you admire. Right? If you're a knitwear designer, you should not be trying to impress other bigger knitwear designers. You should be trying to impress the knitters who don't know how to design patterns and are buying your patterns. So after that Periscope, I had several Twitter replies when I, got on Twitter next from a watcher, a listener who asked, and this is paraphrased because I didn't want to go back through my Twitter stream like 3 months to find exactly what she said. This is paraphrased. She said, but what about taking criticism? You just said that if you read criticism about something and they're not your right people, ignore them. And isn't it dangerous to tell people, to tell your listeners, to ignore everyone who isn't a right person? Because if I agree with you, and this is what she said, if I disagree with you on this point, which I do you just want me to go away and stop following you? And to be honest, at first I was like crushed. Of course, I don't want anybody to go away, despite what I just said. I want to be for everyone. I didn't know. And I want to be able to take criticism. I want to be able to take feedback. I want people to feel like they can give that to me and not like I'm just telling them to go away. And then I had some righteous indignation. And I thought, actually, no. For my business to be focused and to succeed and to help the people it helps, I need to help the people who it helps. And if the majority of what I say isn't helping you, you should stop following. And if you like 99% of it and one message isn't for you, then just ignore it. Like if you don't like being told to turn on your Instagram notifications, or you don't like being told about my newest product, just like ignore that message if you like 90% of what else I'm saying. So because maybe that message just isn't for you. So I stand by that sentiment. If nothing I teach or talk about helps you, you should definitely stop following me. Don't like hate watch or hate listen. It's not my responsibility to share only stuff you like. It's your responsibility to collate and listen to people that create stuff you like, right? I need to focus on the people who I can most help. That might be you, or it might not be you. Either way, I gotta stick with the people who I can most help. So as a user of the internet, it's your responsibility to filter out and listen to or pay attention to only what's most helpful to you. But then I thought on this more, and I thought on this question about, is it dangerous to tell people not to take criticism? Is it dangerous to tell people to only focus on their right people? And I realized, me and this person who's talking to me on Twitter, who I still love, and hopefully you're still a listener, we're talking about two totally different things. I was talking about focus on creating content for people who are your buyers. She was talking about taking criticism and getting better at what you do. The two things seem related, and actually I've been asked this in classes I've taught, like live. I've been asked like, well, if I only focus on my right people, what about those people who are giving me negative feedback? So I think that this distinction between the two is something that's really easy to misunderstand. And since I so often teach about focusing entirely on your right people, maybe you've had this question too. So I think it's important we also talk about what to do with a criticism, right? So you're going to focus on the people, focus on creating content for people who are your buyers and love what you make. And then what do you do with this other information? So let's dig into this. What do you do with criticism? Do you ignore it? Do you pay attention to it? Do you change what you're doing because of it? And the answer is, as it is for almost everything we talk about, it depends. No, you shouldn't listen to all criticism. And no, you shouldn't ignore all criticism. Instead, pay attention to what's useful and ignore what's not. But how do you know the difference? How do you know what's useful and what's not? Especially when you have your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings getting all distressed when someone says something negative. Because our brains have a negativity bias. It's much easier for us to remember and pay attention to the negative things than it is the positive things. So if you got 50 rave reviews and one person said they were unhappy, then you are going to remember the one unhappy person instead of the 50 rave reviews. So how do we navigate this, knowing we have a negativity bias and knowing, though, that criticism can make our work better? So here is the number one way I found of filtering out what's useful and what's not. It comes down to one question. Who is giving you the feedback? Who are they? Now, I don't mean like what's their name and if they have, any experience to give you the feedback. It comes down to this. Are they a paying customer? Are they not a paying customer? Are they talking to you? Are they talking in generalities? So, who is talking? If it's a paying customer, you need to not just listen to what they say when they give feedback. You should actively seek it out. So, when I say pay attention to your right people, I mean pay attention to the people who spend money on what you sell. Your current buyers, your paying customers, are those people. So pay attention to them, serve them better. Part of focusing on your right people is doing more to get better for your right people, making your customers happier and happier. So you need to find out if your customers are happy with your product, with the way you describe it, with how it arrived to them. You need to find out if they're completely delighted or they're disappointed. You need to ask them that and solicit that feedback, not just hope that it comes to you. You need to find out any little thing that disappointed them and then learn how to fix it so that you continue to be more and more awesome for the buyers who love your work and spend money on it. How do you do this? You just ask them. So you can send a follow-up email to customers in the beginning of your business. You can do this just about for everyone. And as you scale, you can do this maybe 2 to 5 times a week. Send a follow-up email to customers a couple days after their item is shipped and ask, did you get this package yet? If so, I'm going to check in that you're totally delighted with it. Now here's a key. One of the best ways to get really specific feedback is to ask this question. I'm always trying to improve, and I'd love to know, how would you rate either the product or the experience on a scale from 1 to 10? And then the follow-up question is, how can I make it a 10? Because most people will say, oh my goodness, I loved it. Especially if they're a fan of you or a fan of your work or they just like you, they'll say, it was a 10, or no, rather, if you don't ask scale 1 to 10, you just say, how was your experience? They'll be like, it was great, everything was great. Because maybe one thing was off, but they can't quite remember it, or they're like, oh, I don't really know how to word it. Because just, if you say, are you happy? They're going to say yes, except for people you've made really unhappy. The scale of 1 to 10 lets people who are like 99% happy say a 9. And then when you say, how can I make it a 10, they might be able to identify one tiny thing you could do to get better. And you realize if you did one tiny thing to get better every day in your business, you are going to have a fantastic business in just a couple weeks or a couple months. So asking them 1 to 10 gives them the permission to not tell you it was perfection if it wasn't perfection. And asking them, how could you get to a 10, gives them a framework for giving you the feedback. So I don't know about you, but I am pretty hesitant to just like start. If I'm happy with what I got and I'm happy with when it arrived and it's just fine, I'm unlikely to just start rattling off things they could fix. But almost everything I've bought online is like an 8 or a 9. And if they said, what could I do to make it a 10, then I'm going to dig deep for even a tiny tweak. And that's the kind of stuff you want to get. That's the kind of stuff you want to know. You don't want to have people telling you, it's fine, when you could be awesome. Right? So you see, the more you actively seek feedback like this, the less scary it's going to be for you to receive it. The more open your people are going to feel, and the better communication you're going to have, the stronger trust and relationship you're going to build with those buyers. And the really like awesome side effect is you're going to feel less freaked out about messing things up. If you realize that most of your packages are going to be in between a 7 and a 10, but that you will have the opportunity to fix it every time you ship out a package, then it's going to take away some of the fear of not being perfect. If you think you have to be perfect every single time, then anybody who says, hey, this got damaged in the mail, is going to like send you over the edge. You're going to feel awful about it. If you only hear negative things once every 6 months, it's going to feel like a big deal every time. If you hear little tweaks you can fix every week, it's going to be easier for you to fix your business. So I want you to listen to this feedback because this is going to make your business better. I'm always talking about learning from your own business. Getting feedback from your customers is the best learning opportunity. And learning and fixing and experimenting and getting better, that is your job. That is what having a business is. It's not just playing in your studio. It's serving your customers and making them happier and happier. Okay? So if it's a paying customer, I want to be so clear. They are your right people. They are who you should be serving. They are who you should be soliciting feedback from. Now, one of the hangups that people have when it comes to feedback or criticism is personalizing things. We talked about this a little bit last week in the reframing episode, which was podcast 115. But often when we hear feedback about our product, because our product came from our own hands and our own heart, and it means so much to us, often we then take that to mean we suck. There's something wrong with us. We did something wrong. When in fact, it's about your business and the structures and the product. So you want to make sure that when you're soliciting feedback that you don't personalize it. Even if the person says you, XYZ, you want to take it to mean your business. And this is really important for both hearing feedback and improving your business, is to distance yourself a little bit from it in the sense that It might be hard to take feedback about like your personality, but it'll be a little easier to take feedback about your business, this thing that's separate from you. As long as it still feels like it's in your inner heart of hearts and it is completely attached to your own self-worth, you're going to resist getting any kind of feedback or any kind of criticism about it, and you're going to resist changing. And although your handmade business comes from your heart, comes from your passion, and comes from your love of sharing this thing with the world, it also needs to not then reflect on your own self-worth. You are a human being worthy of love and affection and worthy of following your dream, whether your business has it together or not. Your business is a separate entity, and your business has systems and products and a website and a brand that is not reflecting on if you're a worthy human or not. So you want to make sure you don't personalize that feedback you get and make it about you and how you suck. Because if you do, you'll really struggle to get feedback, and you'll really probably not react great when you have it. So in order to learn and build a good, solid, sustainable business that can keep going and keep supporting you, you want to make sure that you've separated a little bit. So, and that's why when you ask for feedback, you want to ask about your product and their experience with your company. It's not about if they like you or not. It's about if your product delivered, because a lot of makers and artists actually have this experience where their customers love them, and so they don't want to say anything. Like listening to my podcast, taking my classes, I have people who are, well, not my friends, students and clients who like me, but it might be that the way I delivered a class messed up or failed, or the way that a piece of technology just didn't work for them. I'm actually having a problem right now with an email. A person's email keeps bouncing. They're signed up for one of my classes, which is delivered via email, but it keeps bouncing, and we're working with the email provider to find a solution for it. So that's a real problem. And it's really hard for me not to personalize it and be like, I'm sucking and I'm ruining things, but it has nothing to do with me. It's a technology. It's my problem I need to solve, but it's not a reflection on me as a human being. Okay, so that's what I mean about don't personalize things. Second thing is, when it comes to feedback, you need to turn it into action. And this has to do with personalizing. So if you just like didn't like me, there's not a lot of action I can take from that. If a piece of technology in my business failed you, what are the steps to fix it? I can then take that feedback and turn it into action. If you get a message that, I mean, this is something we all deal with, something got lost in the mail or it got damaged in the mail, what can you do to prevent it from happening again? If it happens once every year, that's maybe a fluke. But if it happens regularly, for example, when I was sending out my books, I was sending them in flat rate envelopes, which are cardboard, and a couple times it got stuck in the mail somewhere, like it was like in a flood or something, and the books got damaged. So that happened 2 or 3 times, and I realized 2 or 3 times over the course of 2 or 3 months. But I realized I need to find a different solution. So now I send them in a waterproof pink bubble mailer. A, it's more on brand. B, it keeps the books way more protected. We haven't had any damage by water since I switched over to that a year or 2 ago. So you want to take that feedback and turn it into action. I'm going to talk a little more about how to do that. And this podcast actually has a free worksheet where I help you decide how to turn feedback into action. You can get that at tarswiger.com/podcast116. If you scroll down, there'll be a box at the bottom. Fill out that box. It'll say, get the free worksheet, and we will email that right to you along with a transcript. So if you want to revisit this, you can revisit the transcript, and it's got that worksheet to turn your feedback into action. Because it's one thing just to hear that something in your business needs to be fixed. It's another thing to take action and change it. So you always want to take the feedback and translate it into something you can do. Okay? And that's not your customer's job to tell you what to do. So if they say a way for you to take it from an 8 to a 10, it's then your job to figure out what are the actions you could take to make it actionable. Some of the feedback they'll give you is just not actionable. Like if their computer monitor showed the color wrong, you can check your photos, you can compare your own photos to your own product and get that as good as it can. But if it's something with their computer monitor, or occasionally I have the problem with the chat room that somebody is using a weird browser and it won't show up in their browser, there's not a lot of actions I can take other than to inform people what browsers they can use. So you always want to think, what is the action I can take to make this better? Now, that's if it's a paying customer. If it's not a paying customer who is giving you feedback or criticism, I want you to ask yourself, who is this coming from? Is this a person who is ever going to spend money on what I sell or not? So it doesn't matter how experienced they are. It doesn't matter what other businesses they've owned. It doesn't matter anything. If they're not a person who would be your customer, then I want you to diminish the percentage of how much you take their criticism and feedback to heart by quite a bit. Because your job is to serve your customers. People who aren't your customers or who would never spend money on what you sell don't get it. They're not going to be able to get it unless they are an expert at helping businesses, like they're a consultant or a teacher or somebody who works with a lot of businesses. They're not going to get your business. In other words, if it's your mom, if it's your husband, if it's your partner, if it's your kids, if it's your uncle at Thanksgiving dinner, can I tell you how much feedback I get from my in-laws about my business? They have no idea. They have no idea. And it's not really feedback, it's just their thoughts. And they're allowed to have their thoughts, but it doesn't really mean anything for your business. So the question when it comes to criticism is always, who is this coming from? And is this a person who would spend money on what I sell or not? So if your mom, your partner, your kids, your uncles don't buy the thing you sell, and they probably don't, then their feedback is not as useful as feedback from actual people who would buy what you sell. So their feedback isn't really grounded in the reality of your business. They might be super smart in a lot of other ways, but they don't have your business. They don't know about your business or your people. Now, if it's a stranger on the internet who's talking in generalities, as an example would be when I saw people complaining about people who posted messages the way that I posted messages. So when they're just talking in generalities and they're not writing to you, they're just generally saying, I don't like this thing. I want you to take strangers saying things on the internet about what they like and they don't like and block it out of your mind with all of your might. That's your job. I want you to take things that aren't aimed at you and don't personalize them and imagine that they are about you. They're not about you. They're about the person. I did this in a YouTube video that's years old. I'll link to it in the show notes at taraswiger.com/podcast116, where the best key for dealing with your family or anyone who's giving you feedback that you don't want is to remember what they're saying is not about you. It's about them. What they say tells you more about them than it does about you. The same is true on strangers on the internet. If people are ranting about something in particular, it's not about you. It's about them and what they like. And if they're not your people, you're not trying to serve them. You're not trying to make them happy. So I want you to keep that in mind. So some people are going to say, I hate it when people use Instagram for their business. That's fine. If Instagram gets you sales and your people use Instagram to shop your product, then who are you going to listen to? Who does it matter more? If you keep listening to the outside world and strangers on the internet and people who don't like the kind of thing you're doing, you're very soon going to not feel motivated to work on your business and maybe not do anything to help your business grow. So you need to decide to listen to the voices, just like we said earlier in the episode, the people who you are serving. Listen to the people who you are writing your message for. If none of your buyers are on Instagram, then maybe you don't need to be. But if a lot of them are, and then you have a collection of friends who don't like people who have businesses on Instagram, you decide which of these voices matters more for my goals. Is your goal to fit in with all of the people you know who don't have businesses? Or is your goal to serve your people and help them find your thing and make them happy and delighted with the thing that you make? That's what it all comes down to. So I hope that this has helped you figure out what you're going to do with the next bit of feedback you get or the next bit of criticism you read on the internet or the next conversation you have. I hope that this clarifies the difference between serving your people and receiving criticism. I want to just underscore, it's super important for you to take all feedback from your paying customers and get better. That is what I mean when I say serve your people and serve them alone. Along with that, I mean the people who aren't your buyers and your people, You don't need to take what they say about what they like and apply it to your business. Your business is to serve the people your business is for. You do that by taking their feedback and constantly getting better, and remembering that needing to get better and needing to improve is not a sign of failure. It is one of many steps we all go through in business, is to get better and improve all the time. It might be kind of frustrating that you still have things you're working on improving, but that's just a part of having a business, is it's always going to be changing. It's always going to be improving. And, that's part of being a human. You're always changing and improving and growing as a human. I have little brothers that are about 16 and one is 17 right now. And this is actually something that really frustrates them. They, at 16 and 17, you think you have it figured out. And when I tell them at 34, I'm still figuring things out and learning and growing as a human and like getting better as a human, they're like really frustrated because they thought they were there. They thought they were fully formed. It's like, no, you still have a lot more fully formedness to go. So the same is true of your business. Whether your business is a toddler, or your business is a teenager that thinks they know it all, or your business is a 50-year-old who has got some parts of her life together, you're still always figuring things out. Your business is always learning and growing, and getting feedback is a really great way of making sure you're growing in alignment with what your people want from you. So I hope this has helped. I would love to hear about how you have used feedback to improve your business. Don't focus on the criticism and the feedback you got that made you feel crappy. Instead, focus on how you've used feedback to make your business better. Remember, there's a worksheet to help you filter through any feedback you get and turn it into action. You can get that at tarswiger.com/podcast116, and then share what action you're taking from feedback you've gotten on Instagram with the hashtag #ExploreYourEnthusiasm. Thank you so much, and I wish you a very criticism-free and enthusiastic day. Thanks so much for watching. You can get weekly lessons like this in your inbox, along with access to worksheets and checklists and transcripts from all the podcast episodes when you sign up below. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and YouTube will notify you when there's a new video. And you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. If you do, be sure to say hello or leave a comment below the video to let me know you're there. Thank you so much for watching, and have a very enthusiastic day.